Hi, everybody. My name's Angel, and today we're talking about ADHD and time. Check us out on NDEMPOWER.ca. So, as you might know, ADHD comes with a certain amount of blindness to time. People who have ADHD are in the now. So they're only dealing with things that are near in time, things that just happened, things that are about to happen, things that are happening now. And so because of that time blindness, that inability to really pull from the past or see forward in the future and make, organized plans around that, um, we tend to perceive organized to understand everything only last minute. And that really creates some challenges when it comes to being prepared. So when you think about being prepared, ADHD is that troll on the bridge not allowing you to be super prepared. It totally destroys timing and timeliness of human behavior. Completely disrupts the entire fabric of time. When you take a look at research and what we know from how our understanding of time is so strongly related to executive function and how executive functioning in children, youth, and adults with ADHD is markedly decreased when compared to the rest of society. It shouldn't really be a surprise that time management can be an issue. And it's not just an issue, but research shows it's the issue that causes the most devastating impacts on people with ADHD, irregardless of their age, which makes sense because when we think about how we organize across time, we need to look at different behaviors in pyramids that have hierarchies. We got to create decision trees to execute those pyramids of behavior. We need subroutines for each of those, and ADHD annihilates that. Organizing across time is so incredibly challenging for somebody with ADHD. And being able to organize behavior into a hierarchy, like what do I do first? Any parent with a child or youth with ADHD will tell you they've seen their kids agonize for hours over what to name their assignment, whether it's a poem or short story, whatever, or their title page, instead of doing the things that should have more priority, like finding the resources you need and deciding what you're going to write about, following the rubric, like those kinds of things. And instead they get stuck on like these details that to people who are neurotypical just seem ridiculous. And that comes from that inability to assign hierarchy to the tasks that are needed, and into that blindness to time where it's like everything is equal. It all has to be done at the same time, which is the day before the assignment is due. I really enjoy some of Dr. Berkeley's stuff on ADHD, and something that really called out to me was that it's not really an attention deficit, it's an intention deficit. Because when we talk about intentions, our intentions are the ability to look ahead and think, okay, this is the outcome I want, so these are the things I'm going to do to have that outcome. Whereas ADHD is a total disorder of intention, because regardless of what we might want our intention to be, the inability to look ahead means that anything I'm doing right now isn't going to meet the intention, right? Because I can't organize around those intentions on my own. Being able to go, okay, I want this, so what do I got to do to get there, is an insurmountable task. So when we're talking about ADHD and all of this preparedness and ability to organize, the steps into hierarchies and whatnot, it's important to recognize too that time blindness is on a spectrum of how far away it is, the more blind we're going to be to it. So if I'm trying to remember, like if I'm making a decision today that I also faced 15 years ago, I'm going to have a very hard time using that information, recalling it in the moment of making that decision. So hindsight is often a challenge as well. And if something's not due for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, depending on where my time vision is, like where the time spectrum is for me, the harder it's going to be for me to actually conceptualize it as something that's real and therefore organized to it. In order for us to make a plan, we have to understand that we need this thing done by XYZ time, right? And for me, that time is typically like in a couple of days. So I tend to do everything a couple of days before it's needed. And as you can imagine, that means quality goes down because you're not investing enough time into the research and all of that. So time blindness, it impairs our ability to go, okay, so this upcoming week, what's due when? How long is it going to take? How about for the next month? How about for the next 6 months, right? What are the steps for each of those things? What needs to be started first? And what needs to be prioritized for quality? What needs to be prioritized for, time? Like where is speed more important than quality and vice versa? And how to get started. Right? So something like a science fair project, like really overwhelming because there's so much to do in that project that how do you even get started? When do you get started? And what does getting started look like? And then ADHD also minimizes the motivation. So people with ADHD don't feel the same pressure to get things done until it's way too late. Our motivation is in the now. And until we feel that pressure, we're not going to be motivated. And so that even the way our dopamine works feeds into that time blindness. Because if we had more motivation to get things started, we might be more able to look at the things that are coming up in the future and need to be addressed. And then time blindness also impacts our ability to, like I said, to look at what happened before. So if you're not familiar with pragmatics, like pragmatics is about being able to take information and just shifting the context a little bit and still being able to use the meat of that information, right? Because no two things happen exactly the same. However, I did have a bullying problem a few weeks before this one and 6 months ago and 6 months before that. And I dealt with those bullies in different ways. What were the outcomes? Which is a really great way to make a decision. But if you are impacted with ADHD, your ability to pull from before and take those contexts in this moment of making a decision can be dramatically impaired. We don't often have access to that immediate video replay of the last time either. So that time blindness comes with barriers to accessing the imagery that comes with that memory as well, which is why we have to have that external visualization, that those cues to remind our brain what we're doing, because our brain doesn't provide us with that same degree of internally created visual imagery that comes from the past or from visualizing the future. Only now, right? Like whatever I'm doing now. Time blindness also impacts our memory. Like our past experiences don't feed into our decisions today. And we have to actively work on creating decision-making frameworks that purposefully include past experiences. I've also noticed, and I've seen a little bit of research, but I'm waiting to see if there's any stronger findings, because so far research hasn't dove into this as thoroughly as I would like. But I've noticed some researchers talking about a correlation between ADHD and lack of longer term memories, where a lot of us have fewer memories from our childhood. We don't remember conversations that we had a few weeks ago, that kind of thing. And not being able to access that medium and longer term memory the same way as other people can also create some real challenges for success in relationships, in project planning, all that good stuff. Which takes us to time managing, right? So we're kind of looking at like now versus the future and this little battle that happens when we have ADHD. It's we have to have strategies that are actually designed to help keep our mental processes and our actions engaged in future goals, not just immediate rewards. And that is really challenging, requires a lot of using technology, a lot of mindfulness, and how we approach our days. A lot of setting up routines that are designed to help us succeed with time management. And just like going back to time management for a moment, I've noticed that everybody on the ADD spectrum has their own generalization of time. And like for me, everything's going to take half an hour. But I've talked to other people where their number is like 10 minutes. Like they think they can get everything done in 10 minutes, or it's an hour. And like whatever that number is that you or your person with ADHD tends to rely on, like that is their concept of time, is everything takes this amount of time. And anything outside of that just isn't really real. Okay, so some strategies that we can do. One of the first things we do is start our day off with good time management, with good time visibility, like good mindfulness about time. And so we want to have a clock in every room, says we're going through the house. We've got access to exactly what time it is. Keeping notes about our morning routine. So if today I tried getting up at 7 to be at work for 8:30 and I'm late, I need to know that so that tomorrow I'm not trying to do the same thing over and over again. So we need to be able to track that, and also leaving ourselves notes isn't a bad idea. We have little signs on the light switches reminding me to turn them off, for example. So as I'm walking out the door, I see the lights off thing, and it's the same at each light switch. Using tech, a phone calendar, schedules, make sure we're adding travel time, and compensating, making sure we're going through our calendar going, oh yeah, this time of year is usually pretty slippery, so maybe I should have another 20 minutes, or I got to warm up the vehicle. Like thinking, actively adding those things to our calendar. And then also setting a morning routine to look at the day's schedule and actively prioritize on purpose. So being able to, get up, you have your coffee, and you look at your schedule and you go, okay, so here's the things I've got to accomplish today. Which things do I need to focus on, right? Like which things are the most important, and going from there. As we go through our day, having timers. I like setting a timer for water. I actually have that like programmed into my smartwatch, which is charging right now. Because it went off and I got dehydrated, and yeah. So making sure that even things like that we actively forget, that we're using technology to compensate for. I use a medication app, so it syncs across my phone, my watch, my tablet, my laptop, my desktop. So it tells me every day to take my meds at that time where I'm supposed to be taking them. And I set timers for meals. 2 meals a day I set a timer for, because that's like the minimum that you need to input in order to have decent nutrition, that kind of thing. And I even have a schedule for check the fridge and the freezer to see if you need, perishables and things like that. Using apps like Circle to limit our time on devices, because we can get stuck in that dopamine loop, and building some sort of reward consequence system. Now, these are the strongest strategies that I have found so far for addressing that whole time blindness. If you have others, I would love to hear them. I'm always looking for something good to add to the list. But that whole building the rewards and the consequences is really important, because we don't get the same reward system from doing tasks. And with time blindness, a lot of those tasks that we do get rewards for, the reward is way apart from doing the action. Like I can work all week, but I'm not getting paid till payday. And so without that constant immediate reward of some sort, it can be really hard to stay motivated. And the time just seems too far away. Like it just doesn't seem connected to the work that I'm doing. So being able to build in a reward system, like for example, if I sit down on time to do my homework when I'm in university, I have a set schedule for doing homework. And if I sit down at the right time to do the homework, I immediately get a token, and that token gives me extra time on my video game later, so I can ditch a chore and play a video game. And just having that token and being able to take it immediately feeds the dopamine. So some other strategies are to have an accountability partner for work. For example, at work, you might have more check-ins with a coworker, or if you have a big project you're working on, having the program manager check in more often. Having intermediate deadlines for big projects. So not the project is due on X date, but the draft of the timeline is due, and the budget is due on this date, and the first draft of the presentation is due on this date. And making sure, and I know this is one that most of us are terrible at, but keeping sleep, diet, and exercise is prioritized. Making sure we actually set time aside to sleep, and that we have time to do something physical with our bodies and to eat properly has to be a top priority. Because if we let that go, everything else goes with it. And making sure that when we turn on a streaming device, nothing autoplays, right? We want to click on it with intention to make it play. Auto playing is like a time sink, like you'll never see anything else like it. So making sure that we think about those kinds of things. What is eating our time? How do we get sucked in to that rabbit hole of time wasting, and being able to mitigate that? Now, strategies for tasks. It is really hard to manage our time around tasks. It just really is. So for each task, some of the things that we can do is to think about other times, like when I'm facing a task, like I've got for example, I'm leaving in a couple of days to go visit my family, and I find it really overwhelming because all of a sudden it's in 2 days, and it seems like yesterday wasn't for a week. So there's a lot of stuff I got to do. But what have I done before to get ready? Because I do this every time, right? So what did I do before to get ready? Did I end up with enough time, right? If I had done it in smaller pieces, would it have been easier? And so this time I actually packed my overnight bag as soon as I got the tickets. I just put some stuff in the overnight bag, the stuff that I tend to run around the house looking for, and made sure I now have like a go bag, basically with the things that I tend to run all over looking for, because I almost missed my airplane once. So now I've broken it into smaller steps. I also suggest that you enter your tasks with a due date and set the alarm. I like Google Calendar because it syncs everything. You can do tasks, checklists, you can share things with people, you can set online meetings, the whole bit. And plus I can attach documents to it too for meetings, which I really enjoy, that it just automatically tracks that document and I can find it very easily because it's attached now to the event. But you can change the alarms. So you can add a notification for 10 minutes before, an hour before, 1 day before, and for the time that we determined in step 1, right? So we're thinking like, did I set enough time? Right? So like being able to go in there and go, okay, so I'm leaving. I've got mine is set to leave 2.5 hours before, 3.5 hours before the flight leaves, because it takes me an hour to get there. They like you to be there 2 hours before, and there's always something that happens, right? Whether your ride is late, or the roads are bad, or you come across an accident. So I just want that half hour of wiggle room because of how far away the airport is. It's easier to be there early than it is late, right? So I have an alarm set for exactly the time I have to leave, plus for 1 hour before, plus for 10 minutes before, and plus for the day before to remind me to make sure all my bags are like by the door and that I'm like completely ready. It seems like a lot of work, but a lot of tasks that we have are repeat tasks, and you can set them to repeat. If a task is going to take more than an hour to do, we need to look at our schedule and create calendar appointments for doing that task in 1 day slot per hour of work it will take. So if I think I have a task that's going to take me 6 hours to do, I need to schedule that over 6 days, and build a reward for every scheduled task that you meet, and a consequence for those that you do not. So I use a token system for how much time I'm allowed to waste on things like TikTok, because I get a lot of dopamine from that. And every time I earn a token, I get a half hour I'm allowed to spend. And when I don't meet a scheduled task, I have to give up a token, which again is a half hour. And I can cash those in anytime I'm not at a scheduled high or medium priority task. I can dump low priorities for reward things if I need to. So those are the things that I've found help keep tasks going. Let me know if it works for you or if there's things that you would change or add. Bedtime. This one's really hard. I find I need a lot of sleep, and yet I have a real hard time falling asleep. So I've had to be very careful to really protect my sleep hygiene. One of the things that I do is I have my phone and my lights start to dim about an hour before bedtime. It kind of starts to set that mood, right? And I have an alarm that goes off just that hour before my set bedtime. Like, this is the absolute have to be in bed in order for me to just go putter through the kitchen, make sure I put things away, have a shower, lay out my clothing for tomorrow, that kind of stuff. And I had to make the rule of no electronics in bed. I just can't help it. If it's there, I'm gonna use it. So I leave my electronics in the office. Doesn't mean that's what you have to do, but like, be honest with yourself, like, because without sleep and regular exercise and a good diet, none of this stuff is going to have the same impact. Those three things are going to be your priority in self-care to make sure you can do all the other things. And then, of course, manage your expectations. Manage the expectations of people around you too, right? This is going to take practice. I tend to be really honest with others about time blindness, not in the, hey, don't expect me to do anything right, but in the, don't be afraid to keep me accountable, because I lose time, right? And I'm kind to myself about it. I hope you can be too, because this is just how our brains work. And it's just a fact of the neurology of our brain. And all we can do is try to use the tools and the strategies to continue to succeed in life, to increase our success in life. But it is ADHD, and ADHD is a disability because it makes the playing field very unequal. And time blindness is one of the ways that it's very prevalent, very obvious that we're not playing with the same sort of brain rules that other people are. Anyways, my name's Angel. You can reach out, Angel at NDEMPOWER.ca. Thank you for your time. I hope this helped. Love to hear your feedback. And yeah, stay strong.